Is with regard to cost comparison. There is no direct answer for that because we have to see case by case. This material, the key attributes are it has high ductility, which makes it suitable for highly seismic regions. It doesn't corrode as reinforced concrete structures do corrode. And it has a self-healing capacity. But the thing is, we use large amount of cement unless we use some recycled materials. So if we see the material cost itself, the cost is quite high, even 1.5 times higher than the conventional concrete. But we don't use materials as materials, we use them for products. We've done one research to apply this ECC, which is engineered cementitious composite, for rigid pavements. Probably we have few projects in this country where we have the biggest project is going to Tajura port. So in that project we've used 400 millimeter thickness rigid pavement. If we use this ECC, we can reduce the thickness by 50%. Yes, from material point of view, it's expensive, but the pavement that we are making requires less thickness. The reason is this material has a higher modulus of fracture. So when we apply for this type of structures, the cost will be overall highly reduced. So we have one demonstration in Michigan, and we achieved around 40% cost reduction for the case of a pavement. But if we apply it for a building, we need to select where to use these materials, where we have high energy dissipation locations. For example, when you connect shear walls with a link element, we can use these materials for those links. So this is with regard to cost, and we're, after doing the research in the University of Michigan, we are going to apply this in Saudi, which is sponsored by Aramco for rigid pavement applications. The second question is practicability in Ethiopia. So we're trying to take this technology to Saudi Arabia. So we cannot bring this swiftly, but we have to do it slowly, bit by bit, where this material can achieve most. We are not saying that this can replace all, but it can go to the industry for at least as an alternative construction material. I think the third question is with regard to sequestration. Yeah. Naturally, concrete by itself sequesters CO2. We call this mechanism carbonation. But the challenge is we use reinforced concrete. So if we have carbonation, when the carbonation front reaches the level of the steel bars, then corrosion starts, which is a precursor for most of the durability problems that we have. But this material, we don't use reinforcement. We use polymer fibers. It could be PE, it could be PP, or it could be PVA fibers. These are just polymeric fibers which do not corrode. But coming to the sequestration, if we use these PE fibers, or PP or PVA fibers, they are just tubular, of lengths of around 12 millimeters and so on. But part of this fiber can be replaced, as I have discussed here, by plant fibers. Plant fibers, if we see them at micro level, they have a lumen which is hollow in nature. That will lead the CO2 to go deeper. But the conventional concrete, it carbonates, yes, it's a very slow process, but only the surface part will absorb CO2. But if we can channel this absorption deeper into the body of the concrete, we can sequester up to 30%. 30%. This is quite huge. So in a way, when we produce cement, the key is the burning process, which we call it calcination. We burn limestone So this will be converted to calcium oxide and CO2 will be emitted, right? So during their life, the structures can sequester at least 30% of the initial emission through these plant fibers. But practically there are different ways. So Dirk was showing demolition of structures, right? So some technologies they use after demolition, they carbonate it. Because it's demolished, because it's reachable to the deeper part of the materials. So when we cure them in CO2, we can again sequester. So this is at the end of life, but we can do it also through the life of the infrastructures. Thank you.
What I like about your answer concerning the issue of the cost is that you said it is more expensive, but as a matter of fact, you use less. So you reduce, and that will compensate. So that's definitely one possible take on your question. The other one is that we need to integrate in our cost analysis the long-term expenses on society. So also the hidden costs. So when you showed this horrible building in Europe that is being destroyed, okay, nobody was thinking about what will happen with this building after its use cycle. So that these costs need to be integrated, and that changes our mentality, absolutely. Then to Fasil, when you said we are poor here in Ethiopia, I disagree. Okay? You have to change that mentality. You have to say you're rich. We are the poor ones. Okay? But seen from another vantage point, because you have a history, such a rich history of how to create communities that are workable, how to reuse materials, how to recycle energy, etc. So I think there is a paradigm shift. That's why we are in Ethiopia. It's one of the reasons. We come because we're also very selfish and we can learn a lot. So I think there is a switch of mentality. And so when you said, for example, we use too much technology in this building, I agree. Okay, I think that's a mistake. And the reason we use too much technology, also too much material, is because we had to comply to all these codes and all these standards. Okay, IUCN requested that, we had to so too much insulation, too much structure, etc. So what I'm learning here is that architectural form should follow climate. Okay? So if I say, you make a cantilever and you protect your building from the sun, and you attach photovoltaic panels to them, so you do double, you gain energy, but you also protect, you don't have to cool your buildings. So you create courtyards, okay, where the air can just go out. So use as little technology as you can, and take advantage of the richness of your culture that has been operating for so long with so little technology.
Yeah, I just on that, see, I did not read yet a headline that Ethiopia is running out of sand, right? But I read it in my country, right? We are poor. We are poor of materials, and that happened because we were acting wrong for the last 200 years. We were acting completely wrong because you followed the linear system. Right? So I think these definitions of poor and rich, I think I agree with Marc, we have to overthrow. Exactly. You are rich, right? You are rich. You are rich in ideas, you're rich in materiality still, because you did not abuse your landscapes as we did. And I think you questioned a little bit also the role of the architects and engineers, right? You talked about the 10% and what can we do. I agree with you, because that is a political question, right? And just to tell you a little bit what happens right now in Europe. So the European Union, because of the problem we have huge problems, okay, let's face it, in Europe. We have huge problems. Everything that we built our wealth on for the last, 500 years comes to an end. So we need to shift, because we cannot continue living as we did before. So therefore the European Union called out, maybe you heard about it, the so-called Green Deal. And the Green Deal says that Europe needs to become the first continent in the world that by 2050 is net zero in CO2 and other greenhouse gas emissions. Net zero. That means you can only get out what you take in, right? So that has a lot of consequences, right? And what to do, and that is now kind of broken down to national laws, and that comes to politics. So for example, the European Union agreed now, and actually while we were here in Ethiopia 3 days ago, the European community agreed right now that as of 2028, we are only allowed to build buildings in Europe, new ones, which are climate positive. That means the building, during construction, transport of the material, the production of the material, and the operation of the building, and the end of life scenario, has to absorb more greenhouse gases than it actually is putting in 2028. That's in 5 years. Now, did we educate the people yet to do these calculations? No. There is nobody around who can do so. Firstly, we have the problem. We have the problem. Then there is a new EU taxonomy that is basically defining what is green. So if whatever, Saudi Arabia or whoever wants to invest into Europe and let's say builds a big building as your commercial bank building, the European Union will say as of 2030 that you're only allowed to build such a building with European money if 25% of all the material used is coming from a secondary stream and 25% of the material put in is biological. That is by 2030. By 2050, 75% has to be from secondary material resources and 25% from biological. So in 2050, no more primary material into new buildings if you would like to get funding from the EU. This has huge consequences, right? As of 2024, the 1st of January 2024, in Germany, you're not allowed to build a heating system based